Brought to you by WikiVD Documentaries. Houston Astros. The Houston Astros are an American professional baseball team based in Houston, Texas. The Astros compete in Major League Baseball as a member club of the American League West Division, having moved to the division in 2013 after spending their first 51 seasons in the National League. The Astros have played their home games at Maid Park since 2000. The Astros were established as the Houston Colt 45s and entered the National League with the expansion New York Mets. The current name, reflecting Houston's role as the control center of the U.S. space program, was adopted 3 years later, when they moved into the Astrodome, the world's first domed sports stadium. The Astros played in the NL from 1962 to 2012. They played in the West Division from 1969 to 1993, and the Central Division from 1994 to 2012. The Astros have played in one World Series in 2005 against the Chicago White Sox, in which they were swept in 4 games. Major League Baseball comes to Texas. From 1888 until 1961, Houston's professional baseball club was the minor league Houston Buffaloes, although expansion from the National League eventually brought an MLB team to Texas in 1962. Houston and officials had been making efforts to do so for years prior. There were 4 men chiefly responsible for bringing Major League Baseball to Houston: George Kirksey and Craig Cullinan, who had led a futile attempt to purchase the St. Louis Cardinals in 1952. R.E. Bob Smith, a prominent oil man and real estate magnate in Houston who was brought in for his financial resources, and Judge Roy Hoffaints, a former mayor of Houston and Harris County judge who was recruited for his salesmanship and political style. They formed the Houston Sports Association as their vehicle for attaining a big league franchise for the city of Houston. Given MLB's refusal to consider expansion, Kirksey, Cullinan, Smith, and Hoffaints joined forces with would-be owners from other cities, and announced the formation of a new league to compete with the established National and American leagues. They called the new league the Continental League. Wanting to protect potential new markets, both existing leagues chose to expand from 8 teams to 10. However, plans eventually fell through for the Houston franchise after the Houston Buffaloes owner, Marty Marion, could not come to an agreement with the HSA to sell the team. To make matters worse, the Continental League as a whole folded in August 1960. However, on October 17, 1960, the National League granted an expansion franchise to the Houston Sports Association in which their team could begin play in the 1962 season. According to the Major League Baseball Constitution, the Houston Sports Association was required to obtain territorial rights from the Houston Buffaloes in order to play in the Houston area. And again negotiations began to purchase the team. Eventually, the Houston Sports Association succeeded in purchasing the Houston Buffaloes, at this point majority owned by William Hopkins, on January 17, 1961. The Buffs played one last minor league season as the top farm team of the Chicago Cubs in 1961, before being succeeded by the city's NL club. The new Houston team was named the Colt 45s after a Name the Team contest was won by William Irving Nedder. The Colt .45 was well known as the gun that won the West. The colors selected were navy blue and orange. The first team was formed mostly through an expansion draft after the 1961 season. The Colt 45s and their expansion cousins, the New York Mets, took turns choosing players left unprotected by the other National League franchises. Many of those associated with the Houston Buffaloes organization were allowed by the ownership to continue in the Major League. Manager Harry Kraft, who had joined Houston in 1961, remained in the same position for the team until the end of the 1964 season. General manager Spec Richardson also continued with the organization as business manager, but was later promoted again to the same position with the Astros from 1967 until 1975. Although most players for the Major League franchise were obtained through the 1961 Major League Baseball expansion draft, Buffs players J.C. Hartman, Pidge Brown, Jim Campbell, Ron Davis, Dave Giusti, and Dave Roberts were chosen to continue as Major League ball players. Similarly, the radio broadcasting team remained with the new Houston Major League franchise. Lowell Passe worked alongside Gene Elstond as a color commentator until he retired from broadcasting in 1976. Elstond continued with the Astros until 1986. The Colt 45s began their existence playing at Colt Stadium, a temporary venue built just north of the construction site of the indoor stadium. 1962-1964, the Colt 45s. The Colt 45 started their inaugural season on April 10, 1962, against the Chicago Cubs, with Harry Kraft as the Colt 45's manager. Bob Aspromonte scored the first run for the Colt 45s on an Al Spangler triple in the first inning. They started the season with a 3-game sweep of the Cubs, but eventually finished 8th among the National League's 10 teams. The team's best pitcher, Richard "Turk" Farrell, lost 20 games despite an ERA of 3.02. A starter for the Colt 45s, Farrell was primarily a relief pitcher prior to playing for Houston. He was selected to both All-Star games in 1962. The 1963 season saw more young talent mixed with seasoned veterans. Jimmy Wynn, Rusty Staub, and Joe Morgan all made their Major League debuts in the 1963 season. However, Houston's position in the standings did not improve. In fact, the Colt 45s finished in 9th place with a 66-96 record. The team was still building, trying to find that perfect mix to compete. The 1964 campaign began on a sad note, as relief pitcher Jim Umbricht died of cancer at the age of 33 on April 8, just before opening day. Umbricht was the only Colt 45's pitcher to post a winning record in Houston's first 2 seasons. He was so well liked by players and fans that the team retired his jersey number 32 in 1965. Just on the horizon, the structure of the new domed stadium was more prevalent, and it would soon change the way that baseball was watched in Houston and around the league. On December 1, 1964, the team announced the name change from Colt 45s to Astros. 1965-1970, The Great Indoors. With Judge Roy Hoffanes now the sole owner of the franchise and the new venue complete, the renamed Astros moved into their new domed stadium, the Astrodome, in 1965. The name honored Houston's position as the center of the nation's space program. NASA's new manned spacecraft center had recently opened southeast of the city. The Astrodome, coined the eighth wonder of the world, did little to improve the home team's results on the field. While several indoor firsts were accomplished, the team still finished ninth in the standings. The attendance was high not because of the team accomplishments, but because people came from miles around to see the Astrodome. Just as the excitement was settling down, over the Astrodome. The 1966 season found something new. To put the domed stadium in the spotlight once again, the field grass would not grow in the new park, since the roof panels had been painted to reduce the glare that was causing players on both the Astros and the visiting teams to miss routine pop flies. A new artificial turf was created called AstroTurf, and Houston would be involved in yet another change in the way the game was played. With new manager Grady Hatton, the Astros started the 1966 season strong. By May they were in second place in the National League and looked like a team that could contend. Joe Morgan was named as a starter on the All-Star team. The success did not last as they lost Jimmy Wynn for the season after he crashed into an outfield fence in Philadelphia, and Morgan had broken his kneecap. 1967 saw first baseman Eddie Matthews join the Astros. The slugger hit his 500th home run while in Houston. He would be traded late in the season, and Doug Rader would be promoted to the big leagues. Rookie Don Wilson pitched a no-hitter on June 18. Wynn also provided some enthusiasm in 1967. The 5'9" in Wynn was becoming known not only for how often he hit home runs, but also for how far he hit them. Wynn set club records with 37 home runs and 107 RBIs. It was also in 1967 that Wynn hit his famous home run onto Interstate 75 in Cincinnati. As the season came to a close, the Astros found themselves again in ninth place and with a winning percentage below .500. The team looked good on paper, but could not make it work on the field. April 15, 1968 saw a pitching duel for the ages. The Astros' Don Wilson and the Mets' Tom Seaver faced each other in a pitching duel that lasted 6 hours. Seaver went 10 innings, allowing no walks and just 2 hits. Wilson went 9 innings, allowing 5 hits and 3 walks. After the starters exited, 11 relievers tried to end the game. The game finally ended in the 24th inning, when Aspromonte hit a shot toward Mets shortstop Al Weiss. Weiss had been perfect all night at short, but he was not quick enough to make the play. The ball zipped into left field, allowing Norm Miller to score. With baseball expansion and trades, the Astros had dramatically changed in 1969. Aspromonte was sent to the Braves, and Stove was traded to the expansion Montreal Expos, in exchange for outfielder Jesus Alou and first baseman Don Clendenon. However, Clendenon refused to report to Houston, electing to retire and take job with a pen manufacturing company. The Astros asked Commissioner Bowie Kuhn to void the trade, but he refused. Instead, he awarded Jack Billingham and a left-handed relief pitcher to the Astros to complete the trade. Cuellar was traded to the Baltimore Orioles for Kurt Blefary. Other new players included catcher Johnny Edwards, infielder Dennis Menker, and pitcher Denny LeMaster. Wilson continued to pitch brilliantly, and on May 1 threw the second no-hitter of his career. In that game, he struck out 18 batters, tying what was then the all-time single-game mark. He was just 24 years of age and was second to only Sandy Koufax for career no-hit wins. Wilson's no-hitter lit the Astros' fire after a miserable month of April, and 6 days later the team tied a major league record by turning 7 double plays in a game. By May's end, the Astros had put together a 10-game winning streak. The Houston infield tandem of Menker and Joe Morgan continued to improve, providing power at the plate and great defense. Morgan had 15 homers and stole 49 bases, while Menker led the Astros with 90 RBIs. The Menker-Morgan punch was beginning to come alive, and the team was responding to Walker's management style. The Astros dominated the season series against their expansion twins, the New York Mets. That season, in one game at New York, Dennis Menker and Jimmy Wynn hit grand slams in the same inning, against a Mets team that would go on to win the World Series that same year. The Astros finished the 1969 season with a record of 81 wins, 81 losses, marking their first season of .500 ball. In 1970, the Astros were expected to be a serious threat in the National League West. In June, 19-year-old Cesar Cedeno was called up and immediately showed signs of being a superstar. The Dominican outfielder batted .310 after being called up. Not to be outdone, Dennis Menker batted .304 and Jesus Alou batted .306. The Astros' batting average was up by 19 points compared to the season before. The team looked good, but the Astros era was up. Larry Dierker and Don Wilson had winning records, but the pitching staff as a whole had an off-season. Houston finished in fourth place in 1970. 1971–1974, the Boys in Orange. The fashion trends of the 1960s had started taking root in baseball. Long hair and loud colors were starting to appear on team uniforms, including the Astros. In 1971, the Astros made some changes to their uniform. They kept the same style they had in previous seasons, but inverted the colors. What was navy blue was now orange, and what was orange was now a lighter shade of blue. The players' last names were added to the back of the jerseys. In 1972, the uniform fabric was also changed to what was, at the time, revolutionizing the industry. Polyester belts were replaced by elastic waistbands, and jerseys zipped up instead of having buttons. The uniforms became popular with fans, but would last only until 1975, when the Astros would shock baseball and the fashion world. The uniforms were about the only thing that did change in 1971. The acquisition of Roger Metzger from the Chicago Cubs in the off-season moved Menker to first base and Bob Watson to the outfield. The Astros got off to a slow start and the pitching and hitting averages were down. Larry Dierker was selected to the All-Star Game in 1971, but due to an arm injury he could not make it. Cesar Cedeno led the club with 81 RBIs and the league with 40 doubles, but batted just .264 and had 102 strikeouts in his second season with the Astros. Pitcher J.R. Richard made his debut in September of the 1971 season against the Giants. The big trade. In November 1971, the Astros and Cincinnati Reds made one of the biggest blockbuster trades in the history of the sport, and helped create the Big Red Machine of the 1970s, with the Reds getting the better end of the deal. Houston sent second baseman Joe Morgan, infielder Dennis Menker, pitcher Jack Billingham, outfielder Cesar Geronimo, and prospector Don Brister to Cincinnati for first baseman Leigh May, second baseman Tommy Helms, and infielder Jimmy Stewart. The trade left Astros fans and the baseball world scratching their heads as to why general manager Spec Richardson would give up so much for so little. The Reds, on the other hand, would shore up many problems. They had an off year in 1971, but were the National League pennant winner in 1972. The Astros' acquisition of Leigh May added more power to the lineup in 1972. May, Wynn, Rader, and Cedeno all had 20 or more home runs and Watson hit 16. Cedeno also led the Astros With a .320 batting average, 55 stolen bases and made spectacular plays on the field. Cedeno made his first All-Star game in 1972 and became the first Astros player in team history to hit for the cycle in August versus the Reds. The Astros finished the strike-shortened season at 84-69, their first winning season. Astros fans had hoped for more of the same in 1973. But it was not to be. The Astros' run production was down. Even though the same five sluggers the year before were still punching the ball out of the park. Lima led the Astros with 28 home runs and Cesar Cedeno batted .320 with 25 home runs. Bob Watson hit the .312 mark and drove in 94 runs. Doug Rader and Jimmy Wynn both had 20 or more home runs. However, injuries to their pitching staff limited the Astros to an 82-84th place finish. The Astros again finished in fourth place the next year under new manager Preston Gomez. 1975–1979, the Rainbow Era. With the $38 million deficit of the Astrodome, control of the Astrodome was passed from Judge Roy Hoffaints to G Credit and Ford Motor Credit. This included the Astros. The creditors were just interested in preserving asset value of the team, so any money spent had to be found or saved somewhere else. Tal Smith returned to the Astros from the New York Yankees to find a team that needed a lot of work and did not have a lot of money. However, there would be some bright spots that would prove to be good investments in the near future. The year started on a sad note. Pitcher Don Wilson was found dead in the passenger seat of his car on January 5, 1975. Cause of death was asphyxiation by carbon monoxide. Wilson was 29 years old. Wilson's number 40 was retired on April 13, 1975. The 1975 season saw the introduction of the Astros' new uniforms. Many teams were going away from the traditional uniform, and the Astros were no exception. The uniforms had multi-shade stripes of orange, red and yellow in front and in back, behind a large dark blue star over the midsection. The same stripes ran down the punt legs. Players' numbers not only appeared on the back of the jersey, but also on the punt leg. The bright stripes were meant to appear as a fiery trail like a rocket sweeping across the heavens. The uniforms were panned by critics, but the public liked them and versions started appearing at the high school and little league level. The uniform was so different from what other teams wore that the Astros wore it both at home and on the road until 1980. Besides the bright new uniforms, there were some other changes. Lee May was traded to Baltimore for much-talked-about rookie second baseman Rob Andrews and utility player Enos Cabell. In Baltimore, Cabell was stuck behind third baseman Brooks Robinson, but he took advantage of his opportunity in Houston and became their everyday third baseman. Cabell would go on to become a big part of the team's success in later years. With May gone, Bob Watson was able to move to first base and was a bright spot in the lineup, batting .324 with 85 RBI. The two biggest moves the Astros made in the offseason were the acquisitions of Joe Niekro and Jose Cruz. The Astros bought Niekro from the Braves for almost nothing. Niekro had bounced around the big leagues with minimal success. His older brother Phil Niekro had started teaching Joe how to throw his knuckleball, and Joe was just starting to use it when he came to the Astros. Niekro won 6 games, saved 4 games and had an ERA of 3.07. Jose Cruz was also a steal, in retrospect, from the Cardinals. Cruz became a fixture in the Astros outfield for several years, and would eventually have his number 25 retired. Despite high expectations, 1975 was among the Astros' worst in franchise history. Their record of 64-97 was far worse than even the expansion Colt 45's, and would remain the worst record in franchise history until 2011. It was the worst record in baseball, and manager Preston Gomez was fired late in the season and replaced by Bill Verdon. The Astros played .500 ball under Verdon in the last 34 games of the season. With Verdon as the manager, the Astros improved greatly in 1976, finishing in third place with an 80-82 record. A healthy Cesar Cedeno was a key reason for the Astros' success in 1976. Bob Watson continued to show consistency and led the club with a .313 average and 102 RBI. Jose Cruz became Houston's everyday left fielder and hit .303 with 28 stolen bases. 1976 saw the end of Larry Dierker's playing career as an Astro, but before it was all over, he would throw a no-hitter and win the 1,000th game in the Astrodome. The Astros finished in third place again in 1977 with a record of 81-81. One of the big problems the Astros had in the late 1970s was that they were unable to compete in the free agent market. Ford Motor Credit Company was still in control of the team and was looking to sell the Astros, but they were not going to spend money on better players. Most of the talent was either farm-grown or bought on the cheap. The 1979 season would prove to be a big turnaround in Astros history. During the off-season, the Astros made an effort to fix some of their problem areas. They traded Floyd Bannister to Seattle for shortstop Craig Reynolds and acquired catcher Alan Ashby from Toronto for pitcher Mark Lemongello. Reynolds and Ashby were both solid in their positions and gave Houston some much-needed consistency. The season started with a boost from pitcher Ken Forsch, who threw a no-hitter the Braves the second game of the season. In May 1979, New Jersey shipping tycoon Dr. John McMullen had agreed to buy the Astros. Now, with an investor in charge, the Astros would be more likely to compete in the free agent market. The Astros were playing great baseball throughout the season. Jose Cruz and Enos Cabell both stole 30 bases. Joe Niekro had a great year with 21 wins and 3.00 ERA. J.R. Richard won 18 games and set a new personal strikeout record at 313. Joe Sambito came into his own with 22 saves as the Astros closer. Things were going as they should for a team that could win the West. The Astros and Reds battled the final month of the season. The Reds pulled ahead of the Astros by a game and a half. Later that month they split a pair, and the Reds kept the lead. That would be how it would end. The Astros finished with their best record to that point at 89-73 and 1.5 games behind the NL winner Reds. With Dr. McMullen as sole owner of the Astros, the team would now benefit in ways a corporation could not give them. The rumors of the Astros moving out of Houston started to crumble, and the Astros were now able to compete in the free agent market. McMullen showed the city of Houston that he too wanted a winning team, signing nearby Alvin, Texas native Nolan Ryan to the first $1 million a year deal. Ryan had 4 career no-hitters already and had struck out 383 in one season. 1980, on the brink. Joe Morgan returned in 1980. Now back in Houston with 2 MVP awards and 2 World Series rings, Morgan wanted to help make the Astros a pennant winner. The 1980 pitching staff was one of the best Houston ever had, with the fastball of Ryan, the knuckleball of Joe Niekro, and the terrifying 6'8" frame of J.R. Richard. Teams felt lucky to face Ken Forsch, who was a double-digit winner in the previous 2 seasons. Richard became the first Astros pitcher to start an All-Star game. After a medical examination 3 days later, Richard was told to rest his arm and he collapsed during a July 30th workout. He had suffered a stroke after a blood clot in the arm apparently moved to his neck and cut off blood flow to the brain. Surgery was done to save his life. But the Astros had lost their ace pitcher after a 10-4 start with a stingy 1.89 ERA. Richard attempted a comeback, but would never again pitch a big league game. After the loss of Richard and some offensive struggles, the Astros slipped to 3rd place in the division behind the Dodgers and the Reds. They bounced back to 1st with a 10-game winning streak, but the Dodgers had regained a 2-game lead.
When they arrived in Houston on September 9th, the Astros won the first 2 games of that series,
and the 2 teams were tied for the division lead. The Astros held a 3-game lead over the Dodgers with 3 games left in the season against the Dodgers. The Dodgers swept the series games, forcing a 1-game playoff the next day. The Astros would however win the 1-game playoff 7-1, and advance to their first postseason. The team would face the Philadelphia Phillies in the 1980 National League Championship Series. The Phillies sent out Steve Carlton in Game 1 of the NLCS after a 6-hour flight the night before. The Phillies would win the opener after the Astros got out to a 103rd inning lead. Ken Forsch pitched particularly strong 4th and 5th innings, but Greg Luzinski hit a 6th-inning 2-run bomb to the 300-level seats of Veterans Stadium. The Phillies added an insurance run on the way to a 3-1 win. Houston bounced back to win Games 2 and 3. Game 4 went into extra innings, with the Phillies taking the lead and the win in the 10th inning. Pete Rose started a rally with a 1-out single. Then Luzinski doubled off the left field wall and Rose bowled over catcher Bruce Bochy to score the go-ahead run. The Phillies got an insurance run on the way to tying the series. Rookie Phillies pitcher Marty Bystrom was sent out by Philadelphia manager Dallas Green to face veteran Nolan Ryan in Game 5. The rookie gave up a run in the 1st inning, then held the Astros at bay until the 6th inning. An Astros lead was lost when Bob Boone hit a 2-out single in the 2nd, but the Astros tied the game in the 6th with an Alan Ashby single scoring Denny Walling. Houston took a 5-2 lead in the 7th. However, the Phillies came back with 5 runs in the inning. The Astros came back against Tug McGraw with 4 singles and 2 2-out runs. Now in extra innings, Gary Maddox doubled in Del Unser with 1 out to give the Phillies an 8-7 lead. The Astros failed to score in the bottom of the 10th. Thank you for watching. Brought to you by WikiVD Documentaries. Please like and subscribe below. Please like and subscribe below.